So good morning, everybody. We welcome you to our online Vendors Day. As you know, we couldn't do it in person, but hopefully this will be a good session for you, as it'll also include a recording that we will be sharing with you after the event once it's approved. For now, we do ask that everyone please keep their microphones on mute, and then we will moderate the questions as we go on the chat. So if you have any questions, please put them on the chat. And we hope that this is a very educational session for you. So now I'd like to introduce our speakers for today, starting with RCCKU.
Hello, so this is Mr. Ariat. Mr. Eric Manu is the contract specialist who helped put these slides together, but he's currently on leave at the moment. And so the subject that I'm going to be covering is vendor registration for SAM.gov. So to get started, there's several places where you can get information about this, and primarily want to direct it to SAM.gov. And what SAM.gov is the registration platform to do business with the government. You can update, renew, and check your status from this website. Search your entity registration and exclusions, and also search for solicitation. I think that's what we're mostly interested with. And I know that some of you out there might mostly have SAM.gov registration already, but this is more targeted towards newcomers into the field. But even if you are already registered, maybe you're going to gain some information by relearning some of the terms that we're going to cover in this, so that you're better up to speed on updating and renewing your status. So why register in SAM.gov? So the 4 rules is that only contractors with an active SAM registration will be qualified and be eligible for awards for contracts and purchase orders above $30,000. So with that, there's some exceptions to SAM, but in general, while we do business in Kuwait, you need to be registered in SAM.gov to get an award for a contract. And this goes for all U.S. federal government contracts. So important facts, there is no registration fee for SAM.gov for any organization. There are businesses that will assist you with registration for a fee, but they are not required to be used to register. SAM representatives do not take payments for the purposes of being awarded the U.S. government contracts, grants, or cooperative agreements. So if you do a Google search for registration in SAM, you'll find that a lot of the first websites that they link you to are maybe vlogs or posters who are trying to get directions to their website on how to help you with their registration. And just be aware that I'm not saying that they're scammers or anything like that. They are for profit, and they might do a good business, or they might give good services to get you registered, but they're not at all required for registration. If you want to go the official route, you can definitely go to SAM.gov and start the process that we're going to cover here in the slides. There are plenty of videos and guides that are on the website itself to help you get to that process. But we're going to do our best to cover some of the terms and the startup process here. So first key term that we have to learn is, what is an N-cage? So before going into SAM.gov, international entities applying for contracts must obtain a North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, commercial and government entity code. So this N-cage, when you get an N-cage, you can supply your legal business name and a physical address for your entity. So that term is going to come up, or that reference is going to come up a lot in the process of registration, and is basically the legal business name and the physical address. You're going to need to have that all throughout the registration process. So the entity name and address you provide to SAM.gov must match the NCAGE record exactly. You may be required to provide or validate your entity. So this is where you want to ensure that everything is exact. If you're using abbreviation for street, like let's say ST, and then you spell it out, spell out the word street in another registration, you want to be aware of those changes and try to be as consistent as possible in both your addresses and entity name. Okay. And then, yeah, there's a link there where you can, if you get a copy of the slides after the show or do a screen save, you can follow that link to get to your NCAGE or registration tool. So after you get your NCAGE, you're going to need to do the validation. So entity's validation confirms an entity's existence, location, and uniqueness, and is required by the Federal Acquisition Regulation, FAR part, that part right there, 52.204-6. The uniqueness of an entity is based on it being a separate legal entity with a separate physical address. So again, using the same terms that we used before, legal entity and physical address. SAM.gov also verifies that there is no existing record for your entity before validation. Once your entity is validated, you will get a unique entity ID. So that's the next key term that we're learning is UEI, right? So that's the new, it used to be a different acronym, but the UEI is what we're going with now. So with a NCAGE, which will be registered as a CAGE code once on the contract, and a UEI, those are the two most critical pieces to getting onto the registration and being registered to do business with the government. So what is a UEI? So SAM.gov assigns a UEI to entities when they pass validation. So registration or getting NCAGE code, get validated, and then you get your UEI, right? So the UEI is a 12-character code used in SAM and other federal agency systems to identify a unique identity. Once you have a UEI, you can register your entity in SAM.gov. So you get the UEI and then you register. And entity registration allows you to apply directly for U.S. federal government contracts and assistance. The U.S. federal government only requires registration for contracts that are federally funded. When U.S. state or territory or any other organization gets funded directly from federal agency, then issues those funds through contracts, the recipient only need a UEI. You must renew your registration annually to keep it active. We recommend that you begin your renewal 45 to 60 days before registration expires, have enough time to validate your entity and complete the registration. So that's a key critical part. We see that a lot here in Kuwait. Something that we try to take note of as well is once your entity goes from an active status to an inactive status, it is very difficult for the U.S. government to pay you using our payment system through DFAS when you have an inactive SAM registration. So you should be renewing 45 to 60 days prior to, and at best, you want to start the process 60 days. And you also want to make sure that you assign the roles to different people. If you're already registered, right, and you are starting the renewal, you have a manager role for your entity, because registering or having to get a new NCAGE and a new registration is very, very difficult once you lock yourself out, or let's say you have one person who's the single point of failure, who has the username and password for your SAM registration, and that person leaves your organization for whatever reason, then you get locked out, and it's hard to get re-registered, because the NCAGE code, as we've been talking about, is based on your identity name and your physical address. It's hard for you to change your physical address to something else if you're a solid structure organization where you have a hard structure building. So just keep that in mind. So what is an entity? Entity validation confirms an entity's existence, location, and uniqueness, and is required by the FAR. We covered that already. Uniqueness of an entity is based on being a separate legal entity with a separate physical address. SAM verifies that there is no existing record for your entity before you validate. Once your identity is validated, you can get the unique identification number. So here is the list of what you would need for the NCAGE code. And once you have this, this is kind of like the pre-checklist. So you can go through here, legal business name, physical address, national identifier if applicable, entity start year, your tax identification number, and this is only if you're going to pay taxes in the US, and you might. So there's a lot of corporations or maybe organizations here in Kuwait that might have be based in the US but have a local partnership here in Kuwait. It just depends on your business structure, right? Banking information, kind of similar to the tax identification number. It's only needed if you have a US bank account where you're going to receive payments. And then, so here's a new kind of a term that we're going to talk about, is information about types of goods or services you provide. So the NICS code and the product and service codes. So you're going to have to look at your organization and then use these codes. And I list the websites there for you in a link that you can go to. And then you have to look at what type of business you're doing. So if you're a manufacturer of rubber flooring material, like rubber mats, you can look up rubber flooring material, and you're going to be able to find a NICS code for that, that product type. And then that's what you're going to register your business as. If you're a general trades company, maybe you're going to register multiple NICS codes, but you're going to have to look at the different NICS codes and identify what types of businesses or types of goods and services you're going to provide as an entity. So, and then you're going to also have to self-report your entity size and points of contact. So you're going to have to figure out all this information before you kind of start the process. This is kind of giving you a simple checklist of things to have on hand as you start the process, so that way you can start it and be able to fill out all the applicable blanks when you fill out the forms. So this is what the validation process looks like. You provide your information to SAM. It goes to the Entity Validation Services, EVS, for review of your information. In some cases, you have to provide verifications. So there's going to be some communication back and forth between the person registering your entity and the office that validates it. So they might ask for additional information. They might ask for a corrective document. So if you follow the kind of table to the right side of the page, you'll see that, you have processes that you go through that for entities starting anew and entities already in SAM. So, but it's a very similar process where you're going to have different results where everything is either correct or everything is good but needs there's some things that need corrections, or you're going to end up with no results because the EVS office determines that the documents are not correct in some way, shape, or form. So please look out for the emails and don't ignore them, and try to resolve them through the EVS office. So for us here in Kuwait, a lot of the documents may require translation. So SAM translations have a certification, and it gives an example here that you have to use to certify that the translation is conducted in accordance to what the document review office is going to look for. So along with every document, right, not every page, but every document, you must submit a certification by a translator and the original documentation. And the translator must certify that their translation is accurate and to the best of their knowledge for each document. So registration for international entities, as we are here in Kuwait, is the same as registering in the US for contracts, except for two key parts. One, you do not need the tax identification number unless you have US employees. And two, you do not need to enter banking information unless you have a US bank that you want to receive payments. So what are representations and certifications? So, to be eligible to bid on contracts, complete the assertions and representation and points of contact. So there's going to be a wizard, kind of like a questionnaire that you fill out to answer to representations, certifications as you go through your SAM registration. And you will need this as well as part of your SAM registration to get government contracts. To pursue federal contracts, other procurement opportunities, you must complete the registration and certification section, complying with the Federal Acquisition Regulation, subpart 4.2. Representation and certifications during the SAM entity process is, as such, eliminates the administrative burden for contractors of submitting the same information for various contracting offices. So in the past, the reps and certs were a different section. And so each time a vendor was trying to bid or propose, they would also have to submit as part of their proposal, their certs, the reps and certs, but now it's all in one place, all registered as part of your sam.gov. So we as the contracting office can print off your reps and certs right off of the website. So it establishes a common source for this information to procurement office across the US. Allows the contracting officer to incorporate by reference the contractor's representation and certifications in the awarded contract. So here we're going to go to kind of look at the website itself, and I'm going to walk you through some of the steps to get you started. Now, I don't have access to the entire process, but after I go through the initial steps, I'll show you the website itself and where you can get some of the aids and videos to get you the exact step-by-step. So starting the registration, you want to go to sam.gov, click OK on the Get Start, and click on Get Start again. So you're going to end up here. You're either going to get renew entity or the Get Started. And you're going to see this prompt, which is the terms and conditions to signing into sam.gov. And you're going to click Accept. And you're going to, from this page, click on the Create an Account. So you have to enter an email, select the language, and click the Read and Accept the login.gov and click Submit. you'll receive an email prompt at the email that you sent it to, and then you'll follow the links to create the account. So following the link from the email, you agree to the SAM.gov user access and click next. And here you'll complete your profile and hit submit. And here you see the request roles. So you're going to register as a entity administrator role. And again, once you finish through, you might have one entity administrator, but you can add more entity administrator once the process is completed. But be on the lookout because, like I said before, you don't want to have just one person, and then that one person for your organization leaves for whatever reason, and then you're locked out completely from your SAM registration account. So once you're logged in, you're going to get this set up here where you can register your identity, and you're going to click get started. And then it's going to go through this questionnaire type of setup where there's going to be a lot of different questions, and you're just going to answer the questions to the best of your abilities. You know, you want to do business directly with the U.S. government, select the answer that best fits you, bid on federal procurement opportunities as a prime contractor. Here, for us, being that in the building currently, we're Department of the Army and Department of the Air Force here, you're going to select the Department of Defense as the primary source for federal government opportunities and click next. And you're going to choose the options. So you can do just registering as a unique identity only, or you can do federal assistance is not really something that I'm familiar with, but back in the States, you can do some grants and other federal opportunities here. But for us here in the contracting offices, you're going to do all awards, and then you can do a download guide and then just additional information. And again, here you're just going to do your best to answer the questionnaire. Are you registering a government entity? Select yes or no. My entity is not a physical location in the US. And then you're going to click next. So once you click no on the you're not physically located in the US, it's going to take you to the N-CAGE required. So this is where you would have had to already register for an N-CAGE. And you can say, I already have an N-CAGE, and then you can provide it. So now, once you provide all the information, it's going to go to the validation services. And this is where you're going to have to wait for them to validate your information. But you can navigate back into SAMS and go back to your workplace and look at your current status under entities. So if you completed everything, you submit your documents, SAM.gov will email you when you can finish the validation, choose whether you allow your entity to appear in SAM. So what that means is that your information, once after you complete the registration process, you can select it to not be viewable by other entities, but it'll still be viewable by the US government. So your information will be visible to you, other users with a role with your entity, and the US federal government users. Your information will not be visible to any other users when searching. For information, or your information is still available under the Federal Freedom of Information Act and is included in data extracts and application programming interface data. So that's up to you to choose whether you're going to be available to everybody that searches or not. So you're allowed to have that selection. So is there any questions at this time?
One gentleman is asking what are the conditions. So for a US company versus a Kuwaiti company, let's say, would the conditions be the same? Would they both have to register in SAM? Is the process the same? I do know that SAM looks a little bit different for US entities versus non-US entities. So that might be a discrepancy there.
Yeah, so there's three key parts, right? So an N cage is different than what a US entity would get because NATO is involved, right? So the N cage is different than the regular cage code. And then the two other pieces we covered in the class, which is the tax identification number, which you may or may not have as a foreign business, and then the bank account information, which you would only need if you were using a US bank. Now, as far as business opportunities being different, you're going to have to look at each solicitation individually. There's definitely going to be solicitations where it's open to both US companies and local companies or foreign companies, but there are going to definitely be solicitations where we're only looking for local businesses because of the nature of the business. Maybe we're getting shares and we need it to be delivered within the next 30 days or whatever. And that's the type of opportunity that will only restrict or will restrict to just local businesses because of the nature of the requirement. Hope that answers your question.
I believe it does. And then one gentleman asked, what are some of the services and goods that the US military is looking for? But I think we can talk about that during opportunities, right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
And I'm going to switch to the screen and I'm going to try it and see if it picks up in class. So this is in the registration process. If you go into here, you see get started in the registration. There is a checklist here that you can download. And then there's also a video of registration process. So the video covers, the step-by-step as well. And I just wanted to show you that there's resources here as well that are on the website that you can get to pretty readily on the website. And each phase, there's different information to help you along the process. Yeah, I just wanted to show that before we continue. Okay, sorry, is there any more questions?
Can a Kuwait-based company qualify for the small business status? And if so, what is the scope of this status?
Oh, that's an interesting question. So we have not seen foreign entities be registered as a small business status. We have also not been using small business status as a qualifier or a evaluation criteria in our acquisition process. However, there may be a push in the future for small business statuses, but we have not seen any guidance or regulations that requires us to, or foreign entities to be registered as a small business at this time.
Okay. And then one gentleman is asking, when you renew, is there a different procedure than versus when you start a new application? For Sam?
Yeah, it's very, very similar. So if you go back to the screen, so you go back to the screen, get started and renew entity is right next to each other. And the validation process is very much the same. You're going to still have to submit all your documents to the entity's validation services to get it validated. But it will be faster in that it's a renewal process and you already have your N cage and everything else readily available versus getting started. You're going to have to do some legwork to get the actual N cage code for the startup.
Perfect. And then someone's asking, does the company need to be locally registered to deal with SAM? And I believe the answer to that is yes, correct?
Yeah, locally registered, yes. I'm guessing the question is, but yeah, they need to be registered in SAM ultimately to get contract.
Okay. And then in regards, this is the last question because I think we want to do the JCCS part. But one person is asking, there's many NAIC codes. How does the US government search for items using a generic or specific NAICS?
Yes. So let me see if I can do an example. I mean, I think we have time. Okay, so currently I think you should be seeing the census.gov NICS website. So this is in my contracting office, we use the same website that you would look up NICS codes as well. And so the question is, how would the government use this website? And what you guys would do, what our contracting office would do is we would look up either some keywords or any digital codes that we might be using. But let's say go into FY22. Some key factors for us is that we don't use wholesale trade as a sector. So when we look up NICS codes, we won't be looking up anything that's wholesale because some of the policies and regulations that we have, we just aren't able to utilize NICS code that fall under the 42. But you'll see us use key terms or going to the list and kind of drilling down from this, going to, let's say, like if we're looking for laptops, we might do information or IT and look up, drill down to the type of equipment that we're looking for, whether it's CCTV or maybe some telecommunications devices. This is how we would use the results and get to the NICS codes. So for an entity looking to do or look up what types of NICS codes you guys would be using, you can look up starting from the sectors and then kind of drilling down to specifically what it is that you guys do specifically. Does that answer the question?
I believe it answers it as well as it can be answered.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I think we can move on to the JCCS part. Captain Lewis mentioned that Douglas Dunn would do that aspect of it.
All right, welcome guys. Sorry for my voice. I'm a little bit under the weather. So we're going to be doing JCCS from the vendor point of view. So what is JCCS? We have been a, I guess, expeditionary contract system for quite some time. Our main function is for the contract officers to be able to find you and for you to be able to meet all of the requirements to be able to do business with the U.S. government. They have put an increasing burden on the contract officers to make sure that the vendors comply with all of the local laws and to also make sure that you meet all the requirements to be able to do business with the U.S. So the registration process, what you're going to do is you're going to go out to www.jccs.gov and go to the vendor site. You're going to enter your user profile. You're going to put in your company information. You're going to verify your email address. Once you have a cage, as you saw through the SAM presentation, you do have to have a cage code now to do business in the CENTCOM AOR. If you're a non-US company, you'll get it from the NATO site. If you are a US company, you'll get it directly through SAM. So they'll verify your email address, all of your company information. I will say, if you're a non-US company, which is probably most of you, and you are doing the NCAGE registration, to make it match exactly as you are putting it in with the SAM information. Doesn't really have anything to do with JCCS, but if you're NATO cage registration, which is what gives you the NCAGE code, doesn't match your SAM information, you will run into problems. As a note, when you register with JCCS and you fill out all of the information, There is a review process that needs to be done prior to you being eligible to win a contract. They don't review the profiles automatically. So just make sure that your information is up to date. And then when you actually submit a proposal to any work that's out there, that's when they will start the review process. So the JCCS homepage, this is what it looks like from a vendor. If you have already registered, you'll just go to sign in. If not, you'll go to register now. You can pick the language that you want. We have a few options to see it on your screen. However, you should pretty much register your company in English because the contract officers looking at it aren't normally going to have a translator readily available. So you do want to register in English, but if you want to see the screens in another language, you can choose those. If you ever need to contact us, there is the help and feedback on all of our applications to that top right, and that'll take you to the help desk ticketing system. Mostly goes to me, and my contact information is at the end of this as well. If you click on the resource page, that gives you all of our user guides and training. And register now will start the registration process. Cage code. So the main identification that we use now in the system is the cage code. JCCS will assign a vendor ID, often called the JCCS ID. You can see that right at the top of your profile. However, for the most part, when people are searching for companies, they're going to be searching by cage codes now. So if you have a cage code, enter that in and click submit. You can start your registration process without the cage code, but before your profile will become fully active, you do have to have a cage code, and it does need to get verified. Very important, try not to register more than one entry for your company. If you suspect that someone may have already registered, but you don't have the account information, please contact us. We'll be able to get that information for you instead of trying to register again. If you enter a duplicate cage code, it's going to let you know that. But if you have a previous registration and you just put in a different cage code, or you had multiple, it will let you get through. And we would prefer that you only have one entry per actual company. So the user profile, when you're starting your first account profile, top page is your profile information. Your email address is also going to be your username. Position, click the drop down box. You can select all of the positions that apply. Phone number, pretty self-explanatory. Password has to meet the DoD standards for passwords. 15 characters, at least one uppercase, lowercase, symbol, and number. Once you complete that user profile information, you're going to get an email. You'll have a link in that. You have to click that to verify your account. Once that happens, your account should be active automatically, but disclaimer, we say 24 hours, but it should happen automatically. Questionnaires. So there is a large group of information that we require to review for your company for contracts in the CENTCOM AOR, pretty much the GCC. So what you're going to do is, after you've created your profile, you're going to log in and you're going to pick where you're doing business at. The questionnaire that you get is going to depend on where you select that you're doing business at. For CENTCOM, it's going to be a 16-section questionnaire. Once you filled it all the way out, you're going to certify it. At that point, you are fully active and fully eligible for all contracts in CENTCOM. To edit that information, you're going to click Edit to the far right of the questionnaire section where it says Country of Origin, and that's going to open up that questionnaire in a new browser window, which looks like this. Once you've completely filled out a section, it'll be highlighted in green. You can either click that menu bar to the left or click on the title to open up that section. They load individually just to speed up the loading process in case people have slower connections. When you're filling out this questionnaire, you want to pay special attention to the key employee section and the licenses. What licenses apply vary from location or country, but do fill out at least all of the default sections. And for every key employee you list, it's very important that you have a legible national ID or passport uploaded for them. The number one thing I see if someone is reviewing your profile and they're going through the questionnaire and they're going to ask for additional information is if you don't have IDs for your employees or you don't have the closest equivalent license for the country that you're doing business in. Certified questionnaire. So once you have filled out all of the sections have turned green, you're going to certify the question and put a date. At that point, you're good to go. You're eligible to bid on any contracts that you see out there. We do post solicitations on JCCS. It's not mandatory for the contract officers, so it's up to them where they post them at. We also import all of NATO's and SAM's solicitations for the CENTCOM AOR, so you can view them through JCCS as well. However, if the solicitations are not posted through JCCS, you can't respond to them through JCCS. You actually have to use the email and the solicitation to respond if they posted them from an external source. So what's next? After you've filled that out, as I said, you are eligible to bid on any work that you find out there. However, the review process isn't automatic. They will only start that review process once you've submitted a proposal that they're considering. If you've already gone through the review process once, it's pretty quick. If you have never gone through the review process, it can take a month or two before they actually review everything and say it's good to go. And as I said, there is the help and feedback link on all of our applications on all the pages. So you're always welcome to submit a ticket for anything you have. But also, my contact information, I am currently located in Qatar, is down there. You're welcome to email me or call me about any questions that you may have. See if I can bring up the chat window if anybody has any questions.
Thank you so much, Douglas. So there is a question. One company saying they're registered in JCCS, but they didn't get a verification email.
That does happen sometimes. Sometimes it gets blocked out on the spam filter. In that instance, just contact me and can either just activate your profile myself or send out a new activation email.
Thank you. And then what is the current timeline to get approved in JCCS once you complete the submissions?
So it varies greatly. And you don't actually have to get approved to submit your proposals. They'll start that process once they're actually considering using your company. And like I said, for a first time, it generally takes a month or two. If you've already gone through it once they review it, the approval does expire. It's not really approval, but the review does expire. But if you've already gone through once and not much has changed, it's pretty quick, a couple of weeks.
Great. And then when updating JCCS with new information, how can a contractor remove old or no longer valid information or documents? This option is currently not available, and with all the documentation available to the contracting officer for review, this often leads to confusion.
So there is the function to remove documents or edit documents. There is a document manager section. So if you go under the questionnaire section, you can see all of the documents that you've uploaded into the questionnaire section, and you can update or remove them there.
And then if you are selected but not approved in JCCS yet, will the U.S. government wait for the clearance or go on to the next acceptable vendor?
There's no rules that say that they have to, but generally, if you have the best bid, they will wait for the review process to be completed.
Perfect. And then last question for now, because we will have a Q&A at the end. How do you obtain a certified and active status for an entity promptly after submitting all questionnaires and documents? Is there a point of contact available to assist with the certified process?
So there's, I guess, two different statuses. The first is just your JCCS profile, and all that you have to do to be active in that is click the email and have a cage code that matches either NATO or SAM's system. If you registered through NATO, you have one of the N cages. JCCS has an interface with their system. So as long as the information matches, it's automatic, and then your profile is active. You're good to go as far as everything except for the review of the questionnaire. The review of the questionnaire is a CENTCOM specific function in JCCS, and for that part, you basically need a contract officer to be considering one of your proposals or just interested in having your company for work. They'll initiate that process. It does take quite a long time for the first one, and then after that, if you've already gone through it once, it's pretty quick. So have your cage code information, makes your profile active. As far as the questionnaire review, you basically need to submit a proposal or be talking to a contract officer about a specific solicitation or request for information that they have, and they'll start that. And those are pretty much the only two, I guess, statuses that would be considered active or inactive.
Perfect. And just to add on to the last question that you answered, the person is saying the key personnel information, the questionnaire manager, when the changes are updated, does not replace the updated documents in the document manager. It appears that the document manager does not have the edit function to delete a line item. This creates confusion as the CO continues asking for expired IDs.
So we did have a recent change to that. And it does replace the document. So you edit it, you can edit it in the document manager, or you can edit it directly through the questionnaire section. But where the contract officers are looking at the documents, or where whoever is reviewing the profile is looking through the documents, they're looking in the questionnaire section. So while you can edit it in the document manager section, replace, remove, there is still an archive under the document manager section for the older things. But if they're looking in the questionnaire section, which is where they will be doing it when it's getting reviewed, those documents are replaced, deleted, updated. If you run into any issues with it, I know we did have a couple weeks ago some issues with that very document manager function that I believe we've got fixed with the release. But if you're having issues with it, don't hesitate to reach out to me, and I'll figure out what's going on with it and make sure it looks the way that you want it to look.
Great. Thank you so much, Douglas. So I think now, for the sake of time, we'll save the rest of the questions for after. And we will move on to our team with the 386, who's going to talk about the government purchase card. Thank you.
Thank you all for your time.
All right, everybody. Good morning. I'm Staff Sergeant Gabriel Sanderson. I'm the GPC Program Non-Commissioned Officer in charge with the 386 Expeditionary Contracting Squadron over at Al Salim Air Base. And today, we're going to be going over GPC Government Purchase Card. Okay. Just a quick overview of what we're going to be going over. We're going to go over what is a GPC, when we use it, how we do business with local vendors when using GPC, the delivery processes, what an 889 representation form is, and then some common documents required for base access. Quick little disclaimer, a lot of this is going to be particularly how we do business at Al Salim with our squadron. Most of the processes will be similar with other air bases around the area, but some things might be a little different when it comes to their local processes. So what is a GPC? A government purchase card. What it is it is to help to streamline payment procedures and reduce the administrative burden associated with purchasing supplies and services. It's supposed to help provide on-the-spot purchasing and receiving. Currently, our GPC flight makes all purchases under $35,000 USD, which is approximately 9,800 Kuwaiti dinar for supplies. Service purchases are limited to as well the same amount for one-time non-reoccurring services. GPC flight is composed of one approving official currently, which is myself, and usually 2 to 3 cardholders who are each issued a GPC credit card. Currently for Al Salim, we have more than 2 to 3 cardholders just to help with the volume of requests that we receive. And we are possibly looking into getting another approving official down the road if we keep getting more requests. So basically what the GPC is for is to basically help expedite the process for lower dollar value buys. That way we can avoid having to go through the entire acquisition process of writing a contract, soliciting to vendors, things that would definitely take much longer. So when we would use a GPC, for commodity purchases, our threshold, as I mentioned, is $35,000 when in a contingency environment, basically overseas where we are right now. Often you'll see them used for things like office chairs, HVAC parts, things of that nature. For services, it's the same threshold, $35,000. You'll see them often used for things like equipment rentals, some small other services here and there. Recurring services must be put on a contract. So anything that it is going to be used multiple times throughout a year or multiple times throughout any type of time period, those need to be on an actual acquisition contract. So GPC is for one-time buys. So example of reoccurring things would be porta-john cleaning services, stuff of that nature. You can also use them for construction purchases, but the threshold is much lower for those. About is $2,000. Some exceptions do apply. You'll often see those for any alterations of real property being fixed buildings, like maybe fixing a doorway, some windows, some gravel, stuff of that nature. We don't see these very too often just because of how low the dollar value is. Many construction projects do not fall below that threshold, but it is an option if we do need it. And then we can also make buys off of established BPAs. The threshold will still be the same for $35,000. You can order up to that amount off any current BPAs that we currently have with our installation. Currently, we have some concrete, mattresses, beds, water, wipes, etc. Just same thing. They should need to fall under that threshold of $35,000. All right. So when we're doing business with local vendors, the unit resource advisors will reach out to local vendors to acquire quotes whenever they do have a GPC request that needs to be fulfilled. Go. When providing quotes, please include any and all additional charges to the total price, any credit card charges you may issue, shipping and handling, delivery. This is just to help us better understand, make sure we're getting the correct price, and for us to better track when it comes to acquiring certified funds for the request. All other forms of communication with local vendors will go through directly with the GPC contracting office until a notice to proceed is given. So initially, you'll be contacted by a resource advisor for a quote. Once they receive that quote, everything will go through our office GPC through our org box or through me directly through email or any other official avenues. After a notice to proceed is issued by the CCO or GPC cardholder, customer can work with the vendor for delivery. You'll receive that notice to proceed via email from the customer or the GPC office ourselves. From there, you can begin talking directly with the customer about how to arrange delivery. 386 is using AmCham's sign-up registration spreadsheets to collect vendor information and trial new vendors for onboarding to do business with Al Salim Air Base. This is a new feature we are trying out so we can gauge more businesses in the local area that we currently do not have on our vendors list. Right now, it is a completely optional list that can be utilized by our customers. It's going to be a buy-to-buy basis. If we do a couple buys with your company and we are satisfied with the service and our products that are being provided, we can then justify adding you to our permanent local vendors list that we have on base. So basically the last slide is as I explained. All right, so the delivery process for Al Salim specifically. Packages will be received by resource advisors or a designated squadron representative at the Kuwaiti sandpit. So either the resource advisor that you've been having direct contact with or someone from their unit that they've designated to pick up for them. Delivery made by local vendors at the Kuwaiti sandpit. Our delivery and payment assigned days are Mondays and Wednesdays from 10 a.m. to 12 in the afternoon. Right now, we are trying to stay very strict on those days specifically and during those time periods to avoid any buys or any deliveries that we aren't tracking. Right, the RA or designated individual must be present to accept and sign for any and all items that you are delivering. Email notification will be sent to the RA and vendor to coordinate delivery. Payment will be made upon receipt of goods. It will also be made upon inspection of the goods as well. Resource advisors may not pick up packages for other squadrons. If you are out there, you see another resource advisor or another card holder that is not there to pick up specifically for the person you're doing business with, they cannot accept those items and they cannot, well, I'm not going to say they cannot make payment. Often, if the card holder you're meeting with is having issues with their card, maybe another card holder can make payment for them. But we do try to avoid that to avoid any invoicing confusions. But when it comes to pickup, it must be picked up by the RA or member that you have been directly having contact with. RAs cannot pick up for other squadrons. Also, please do not loiter around the Kuwaiti sandpit during delivery hours if you are not making a scheduled delivery. Currently, we do have a number of companies out there trying to provide capability statements, business cards to try to get business with Al Salim. We do ask that you please do not do that. The Kuwaiti sandpit is not a location for us to do business or to engage business with us. We will be using the list, the trial list I mentioned in the previous slide to begin doing that, to begin opening up to more businesses. So again, please, if you do not have any business to be at the Kuwaiti sandpit, please avoid being there. So an NDIA Section 889 representation. So it's Section 889 of the John S. McCain National Defense Authorization Act prohibits government contractors from 1, providing the federal government with telecommunications or video surveillance equipment, systems, or services, or an essential component thereof, produced or provided by 5 Chinese companies with their subsidiaries and affiliates. Number 2, also prohibits government contractors from using these prohibited items or services, regardless of whether they are used in the performance of work under a federal contract. Below are the 5 prohibited Chinese companies. You can read those down there. Vendors must have a Section 889 form on file with the GPC contracting squadron. If you are a company that we have done business with in the past, we will more than likely already have one on file for you. If we have never done business with you before, then if it's your first time buying with Al Salim, you will more likely be sent a blank Section 889 form to be filled out by you and signed to include your vendor code, cage code, or N cage code. Once we have that on file with you, signed by you, then we can proceed to do business. Some common documents required for base access. Base access, you might require that if you need to come on base to make a certain delivery, or if you're coming on base to provide a certain service. You'll likely need your Kuwaiti civil ID, installation access application, passport, driver's license, Kuwaiti Chamber of Commerce letter, the contract or LOA that you are coming onto base for, the KMOD J2 badge application, and a base access request letter in both English and Arabic. If you do need to come on base and you do require some of these items, I would recommend coordinating with the RA or whoever you've been in contact with to come on and do work for. They will be the ones to help facilitate all of these documentations if you require help with them. All right, I know that was quick and kind of short and to the point, but do we have any questions?
Thank you. One person is asking how much has been purchased so far in 2023 with the GPC?
Purchased so far in 2023? I don't have an exact number on hand with me, but it is, I can say we do purchase about 3 to 4 million in GPC buys alone a year on average.
Okay.
Over 2 million last year.
Over 2 million. So it is a very popular form of payment for the military, again, because of how quick it is and how much it cuts out of the admin work. What is that? So IS lead 3 to 4 million and then
Yep.
2.
Yep.
Okay. And then how can vendors reach out to the end users to provide quotes or to understand the end user requirements, as most companies here are general trading companies?
Yes. So what we do to provide for the vendors, we do provide them lists, or for our customers, we provide lists of the local vendors. Currently our main list is vendors that we've done business before and are deemed reliable. What we're trying to accomplish right now with our trial list, which everyone attending this meeting will be added to that trial list. It'll include the capability statements, what they can provide, and as well as contact info for customers to reach out to you. We do recommend that we recommend that the customer is the one reaching out to you rather than you reaching out to the customer. You're more than welcome to reach out if you would like to, if it's invited from the customer, but the GPC program is based on mainly the customer's needs and what they require. I hope that answers your question.
I think it does. So how can veterans or U.S. retired veterans get on base? Is that a possibility nowadays?
For U.S. veterans, for Aliyah Salim right now, I know our processes for getting on base is a little more strenuous than others. I'm afraid I don't know how it changes for veterans specifically. I would have to look into that.
There needs to be a valid reason to get on base.
Right. One, definitely have a valid reason. They can't just come on just for sightseeing or just to talk to people. It will need to be set up ahead of time if they're meeting with a specific person on base or a specific squadron. And then more likely from there, whoever they're meeting with could probably facilitate a visit for them and help them get whatever documentation they require. I'm sorry, I don't have an exact answer for you.
Again, like, you can't come on solicit.
Right. Again, you can't come on directly for the sole reason to just solicit your business. You must be coming on for a valid reason, and you must coordinate with a member already on base.
Okay, I just got a message saying that ASG is allowing vets to access bases now. So I'm not sure if this is a different way of working compared to Aliyah Salim.
I am not tracking that new policy. If that is something that is new, I'd have to verify that once we get back to our squadrons. But if it is something they are doing right now, I would still recommend coordination ahead of time.
Okay. And then does 386 econs cover a particular base?
Yes, we particularly cover Aliyah Salim Air Base and all the squadrons and groups that fall under Aliyah Salim.
Okay. And then they're asking for your contact information. Is there an email that they can reach out to? Or is it a general email that you would rather have them reach out to?
For a general email, we do have an econs org box that I can definitely give out at a later time. Right now, I prefer not to give it over this format at the moment, but once we have the lists of the vendors that are attending this meeting, I can reach out to them and provide them with an org box that they can reach us with.
That's good. And I think those are the questions that we have right now for GPC.
Okay.
So I think now we'll go on a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back.
All right. Good morning, everyone. I am First Lieutenant Andrew Sperry of the 386 Expeditionary Contracting Squadron. I am currently the Infrastructure Flight Commander, but I will be going over the entire Air Force procurement process today. So to begin, topics I'll be going over today are going to include the 3 main portions of the procurement process, including planning, procurement, and the post-award admin. The planning phase, they're going to touch on requirements development and the pre-solicitation considerations by the government. We'll then move into the procurement phase, touching on solicitation, evaluation, and award, including the posting requirements, industry questions, answer management, process for quote acceptance, government review of quotes, and award selection, briefly ending on the post-award administration after the procurement process is complete. So to begin with the planning phase, the government splits this phase into three parts: the requirement development by the end user, the pre-solicitation considerations by the contracting officer, customer, and end users, and finally market research performed by the contracting officer. The planning phase begins with the what, when, and where of the requirement. When an identified need for a product or service is substantiated, the organization with the need, so the customer or end user, secures funding, drafts a statement of work, or SOW, or a PWS, performance work statement, to include salient characteristics of the requirement, coordinates with the contracting office, accepts resulting products, services, and invoices, and attests to the contract completion. During post-award, usually the end user is going to be doing most of those accepting requirements. The contracting office navigates federal rules and regulations to develop and manage solicitations, proposal reviews, contract awards, administration, and closeouts. We ensure that the what, when, where are fully fleshed out and documented, and that all performance expectations are defined. So to touch on the market research phase within the planning phase, the first step in acquisition planning by the contracting office, the contracting officer can collect and analyze information about capabilities and options within the market that can satisfy the requirement. The contracting office will utilize internet searches, similar contracts, historic awards, scientific journals and publications, databases like SAM and JCCS, as well as industry days, conferences, and general requests for information. Moving into the bulk of this brief, we'll be talking about the procurement phase. So this is split into our solicitation, evaluation, and award. Under solicitation, we have the what, when, and where of the requirement, in addition to having industry questions and answer management by the contract office. Solicitations include the broadcasting of requirements to prospective contractors and the formal requests for proposals or quotes. We'll touch more on that later. The evaluation aspect of the procurement phase includes the process for quote acceptance and government review of quotes. An evaluation is an assessment of your proposal and ability to fulfill the requirement. Finally, the last aspect of the procurement phase is the award and award selection. The award is the decision of the contracting officer to enter into a contract with you to satisfy the requirement. The first section of the procurement phase, solicitations, can be conducted via request for information, which has no attached value, request for quotes for acquisitions valued below 75,000 KD or 250,000 US dollars, invitation for bids, which typically are reserved for construction projects. That's going to be the least utilized solicitation process, especially out here at Al Salim. And finally, we have requests for proposals, usually utilized for acquisitions valued at 75,000 KD and higher. To continue on solicitations, they typically include the what, when, and where of the project. This will typically be outlined in the SOW or PWS. They also include the quantities, anticipated terms and conditions, information required for the quote, criteria for evaluations, response submission deadlines, response formats, which is typically going to be email, government points of contacts, and opportunities to ask questions, usually in the form of an RFI. Depending on the number and or complexity of the questions received, The contracting officer holds the right to extend the solicitation response deadline. The solicitation posting jumpstarts the solicitation phase. The single point of entry versus direct outreach and circulation usually identifies the type of solicitation. In this geographic region, federal rules allow contracting officers flexibility, utilizing the single point of entry, or SAM, System for Award Management, the Joint Contingency Contracting System, JCCS, direct outreach to qualified vendors, which we utilize usually from these lists that we get from the vendor days via email. And then we also have solicitations for blanket purchase agreements, multiple award task order contracts, and indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity contracts. Proposal development and posting, while in the procurement phase, includes a successful contract award and starts with development of a proper persuasive response to the solicitation. It is helpful to develop and maintain a relationship with your local US DoD contracting office and to read the request carefully. It is vital that you notice relevant info, such as the question's due dates, POCs, and respond by dates. We encourage that you seek clarifications and ask as many questions as possible so that you can understand the requirement. You must address all stated requirements and maintain SAM and JCCS database registration statuses. A well-written and competitively priced response addressing all requirements in a clear manner will work to your advantage. The next step in the procurement phase is evaluation of quotes, proposals, or bids. Best value can be determined using one of two methods: lowest price technically acceptable or trade-off. Slight typo, the LPTA is usually our most common type of procurement, at least at the 386. The best method is usually determined early in the acquisition planning process, and the chosen evaluation method and criteria is made clear to vendors during the solicitation process. This is usually outlined in the SAO or PWS. An evaluation is completed by the customer, end user, and contracting officer. When using lowest price technically acceptable, cost or price plays a dominant role in the source selection. Proposals are evaluated for acceptability, but not necessarily ranked. The government would not realize any value from a proposal exceeding the government's minimal technical requirements. The offerer receives no credit for exceeding minimum standards. LPTA is used on clearly definable requirements expressed in terms of performance objectives, measures, and standards to determine the acceptability of offers. Minimal risk of unsuccessful contract performance, or when no or minimal value will be realized from a proposal that exceeds the minimum technical or performance requirements. LPTA is also used when the proposed technical approaches will require no or minimal subjective judgment by the source selection authority as to the desirability of one offeror's proposal versus a competing proposal. Minimum risk of unsuccessful contract performance. There is a high degree of confidence that reviewing the technical proposals of all offerors would not result in the identification of characteristics that could value or benefit. LPTA is also used when the contracting officer documents the contract file describing the circumstances justifying the use of the low price technically acceptable source selection process. The other evaluation type is trade-off. Following along the best value continuum, trade-off is appropriate when it is in the government's best interest to consider award to other than lowest price or highest price technically rated offer. When using the trade-off process, evaluation factors and significant sub-factors that affect contract award and relative importance must be clearly stated in the solicitation. When evaluating through trade-off, technical or past performance considerations play a dominant role in the selection. The government has the ability to trade cost or price for the quality factors or non-cost factors. The government awards the contract to the offerer proposing the combination of factors that represents the best value based on the evaluation criteria. Trade-off is used if the requirement is less defined, meaning more development work is required. It is used if there's a significant risk, performance risk, or if technical and past performance considerations may play a dominant role in source selection. Trade-off can also be used when it is in the government's best interest to consider award to other than the lowest price offerer or other than the highest technically rated offerer. The solicitation must clearly state the use of evaluation factors that can affect contract award and relative importance. When using trade-off as a form of evaluation, solicitation must state whether all evaluation factors other than cost or price, when combined, are significantly more important than, approximately equal to, or significantly less important than cost or price. Evaluation is conducted on both cost price and non-cost price factors. This process permits trade-offs among cost or price and non-cost factors, allowing the government to accept other than lowest price proposals. Award is made to the offerer proposing the solicitation that represents the best value to the government. The perceived benefits of the higher price proposal must merit the additional costs. Moving on from evaluations briefly, exchanges before receipt of proposal may take place between the contractors and the contracting officer. Exchanges of information among all interested parties from the earliest identification of a requirement through receipt of proposals are encouraged in accordance with FAR 15.201. Some advantages to exchanges include improved understanding of government requirements and industry capabilities. It allows suppliers to judge whether they can satisfy the government requirements, increases competition, and improves efficiency in proposal preparation, evaluation, negotiation, and award. However, there are some limitations to exchanges. The government cannot favor one offerer over another, reveal offerer's technical solution, reveal offerer's price without offerer's permission. Government may inform offerer that its price is considered too high or too low and reveal analysis, or the government may not reveal names or individuals providing information about offerer's past performance. All exchanges with offerers after release of the solicitation shall be controlled by the contracting officer. Returning back to evaluations, there are a few mandatory factors into proposals, quotes, or bids. We must evaluate cost or price, unless on a MATOC, and we must also evaluate quality. This may address quality through one of the non-cost factors, such as past performance, LPTA, technical excellence, management capability, and personnel qualifications. Evaluation via past performance will usually be used. Past performance evaluation is separate from responsibility determination. A solicitation must describe approach for evaluating past performance, provide offerers opportunity to identify past and current contracts, and allow offerers to provide information on past problems and corrections. If no record of relevant past performance exists, we must assign a neutral rating. When evaluating via past performance, there are three aspects of past performance evaluation. They are recent, relevant, and quality. Recent and relevant efforts accomplished by the offerer comparable to the current source selection. Relevancy includes similarity of service or support, complexity, dollar value, contract type, and degree of subcontracting teaming. The contracting officer will review how well the contractor performed by gathering information from customers on how well the offerer performed those past contracts. Reviewing for trends so a confidence rating can be assigned. Staying on the topic of past performance evaluation, sources of past performance information may include information provided by the offerer as solicited, information obtained from questionnaires, and government sources to include past performance information retrieval system, federal awardee performance and integrity information system, other databases, as well as interviews with program managers, contracting officers, ACOs, cores, etc. In summary, it is extremely important to understand the entire procurement process. Benefits to the suppliers include knowing how the government accepts, reviews, and awards quotes to promote fair opportunity. Benefits including allowing suppliers to judge whether they can satisfy government requirements, improve efficiency in proposal prep, evaluation, negotiation, and award. Helps you to ensure that the quotes are responsible and fair and reasonable, and to ensure that you are not deemed non-conforming and give you a better chance for reward. That is all I have for today, but I am opening the floor to any questions.
Thank you. So one of the questions we got is, could personnel qualifications be considered past performance?
Yes, personnel qualifications can be considered past performance in a whole scope of the proposal.
Okay. Is there any other questions from anybody else? If you could please type them on the chat for performance, as well as RFQs, RFIs, or solicitation questions. If not, then we will move on to the next topic.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much.
Good morning, I'm William Lucas, and I'm CTIP Combat Trafficking and Persons Coordinator for the 408 Combat Support Battalion. And here's today's agenda and the topics we'll cover during this portion of the brief. As you can see, there is a place for questions at the end of the brief, and I ask you to hold your questions till the end. The topics we're going to cover is: what is human trafficking? Counter trafficking and persons overview. CTIP federal acquisition regulations. Compliance, what are the minimum requirements? Compliance, annual certification. Management reviews, and contract violations. Types of human trafficking. It is typically defined in 7 parts. Sex trafficking comprises a significant portion of overall trafficking. Sex trafficking would not exist without the demand for commercial sex flourishing around the world. The United States government adopted a strong position against prostitution in the December 2002 policy decision, which notes that prostitution is inherently harmful and dehumanizing, and it fuels trafficking in persons. Turning people into dehumanizing commodities creates an enabling environment for human trafficking. The United States government opposes prostitution and all related activities, including pimping and pandering, and maintains that these activities will not be used as a legitimate form of work for any human being. Child sex trafficking. Each year, more than 2 million children are exploited in the global commercial sex trade. Many of these children are trapped in prostitution. International covenants and protocols obligate criminalization and commercial sexual exploitation of children. The use of children in the commercial sex trade is prohibited under both U.S. law and the United Nations Trafficking in Persons protocols. There can be no exceptions, no cultural or social economic rationalizations. Terms such as child sex workers are simply unacceptable because they falsely sanitize the brutality of this type of exploitation. Forced labor. In most instances, forced labor occurs as unscrupulous employers take advantage of gaps in law enforcement to exploit vulnerable workers. These workers are made more vulnerable to forced labor practices because of unemployment, poverty, crime, discrimination, corruption, political conflict, and cultural acceptance of the practice. Immigrants are particularly vulnerable. Female victims are forced into bonded labor, especially women and girls in domestic servitude, and are often sexually exploited. Forced labor is a form of human trafficking that can be harder to identify than sex trafficking and may not involve the same criminal enterprise, but may instead involve individuals who are forced or coerced into household work or even simply work in factories. As far as debt bondage goes, the vulnerability of migrant laborers to trafficking schemes is especially disturbing because this population is so sizable in some regions. 3 potential contributors can be discerned: the abuse of their contracts, inadequate local laws governing the recruitment and employment of migrant laborers, the intentional imposition of legal costs and debts on these laborers, in the source country or state, often with the complicity or the support of labor agencies, employers in the destination country. Some abuses of contracts and hazardous conditions of employment do not themselves constitute involuntary servitude. Costs imposed on laborers and the privilege of working abroad places laborers in situations highly vulnerable to debt bondage. Costs alone do not constitute debt bondage or involuntary servitude. When combined with exploitation by unscrupulous labor agents and employers in the destination countries, these costs or debts, when excessive, become debt bondage. Forced child labor. Most international organizations and national laws recognize that children may legally engage in light work. In contrast, the worst forms of child labor are being targeted for eradication by nations across the globe. The sale and trafficking of children and entrapment and bonded and forced labor are clearly among the worst forms of child labor. Any child who is subject to involuntary servitude, debt bondage, or slavery through use of force, fraud, or coercion is a victim of human trafficking in persons, regardless of the nation or location of that exploitation. Domestic servitude. Domestic workers may be trapped in servitude through the use of force or coercion, such as physical, including sexual or emotional abuse. Children are particularly vulnerable. Domestic servitude is particularly difficult to detect because it occurs in private homes, which are often unregulated by public authorities. For example, there's a great demand in some wealthier countries in Asia and the Middle East for domestic servants, who sometimes fall victim to conditions of involuntary servitude. Lastly, child soldiering is a unique form of human trafficking in persons because it involves unlawful recruitment of children through force, fraud, or coercion. Children are exploited for their labor to be used as sex slaves in conflict areas. UNICEF estimates there's more than 300,000 children under the age of 18 currently being exploited in more than 30 different armed conflicts worldwide. While many of the child soldiers are between the age of 15 and 18, some are as young as 7 and 8. Many children are abducted to be used as combatants. Others are made to unlawfully serve as porters, cooks, guards, servants, messengers, or spies. Some children have been forced to commit atrocities against their families and communities. Child soldiers are often killed or wounded, with survivors suffering multiple traumas and psychological scarring. The problem is most crucial in Africa and Asia, but armed groups in the Americas and Middle East are also unlawfully using children in conflict areas. This next slide is a brief overview of our how we operate our Trafficking in Persons program within the 408. The CTIP overview is to execute our quality assurance surveillance, and oversight to meet CTIP's compliance standards in accordance with contractual terms and conditions. I have included my contact information as well as Mr. Vu Mai, who's also our QAS lead. And you feel free, it's a DSN number, I know, but we also attach your emails there. So feel free to shoot me an email if you have any questions or you know anybody might be a victim of a CTIP violation. Under key events, I have detailed how we conduct our surveillance, random camp and housing inspections of both other country nationals, local and American nationals, compliance and management reviews on a semi-annual basis of all prime contractors, and we also conduct random employee interviews. My authority to conduct these inspections is derived from the Federal Acquisition Regulations 52-222-50. Any and all CTIP violations are reported under appropriate authorities. Here in Kuwait, the Kuwait Ministry of Defense, the Department of Defense, Inspector General, Department of Criminal Investigative Services, and warranted ACOs. FAR Subpart 52-222-50, combating trafficking in person, prohibits contractors and their personnel from trafficking in persons during the contract's period of performance. 52-222-50 was updated in January 2019 to define recruitment fees under FAR Case 2015-17, which definitizes the definition of recruitment fees. Other clauses that deal with CTIP that you might see in contracts are DFARS 252.225-7995, DFARS 242.02, Contract Administration of Office Functions, PGI 222-1700 through 1704, and that includes contractor policy violations and remedies. There also are many, many, many other CTIP clauses that deal with CTIP. CTIP compliance. The minimum requirement for CTIP compliance is an awareness program usually achieved by annual training conducted by a contractor and recorded through sign-in sheets. The process to report without fear of retaliation. This is an addition to the DODIG, Department of Criminal Investigative Services reporting numbers. I have seen this achieved by simply companies posting a QR code via website where employees can honestly post violations, internal tip lines, and employee forums. Recruitment and wage plans. Somebody put this as a plan to ensure that the recruitment is done within the confines of 52-222-50. And as I said earlier, it was last updated in 2019 to further define recruitment fees. A housing plan. If either the contractor or a subcontractor houses employees' accommodations, they must meet host nation housing standards. Housing standards here in Kuwait are defined by the Kuwaiti labor law and the Kuwait Public Authority on Manpower. They must also have a plan to remove persons who engage in trafficking either by terminating the employee and termination of subcontracts and subcontract employees. CTIP compliance, annual certification. Just a couple quick points to make here on this slide. The contractor must submit an annual certification to the contracting officer. After that submission, the contractor must attest that no violations had occurred, and if violations had occurred, that appropriate action was taken in remediating the findings. Typically, we will find out through either the Inspector General, the DODIG, the Defense Criminal Investigation System, the contract ACO, or reported through me for all violations. If anything surprises us, then that's usually not a good thing. CTIP compliance for management reviews are intensive and somewhat intrusive to the contractor. However, they're necessary to satisfy the requirements of FAR Clause 52-222-50. Typically, all management compliance reviews will include these areas: employee agreements, lists of occurring employees, all payroll documents, passport and visa documentation to include civil IDs, any subcontractor contracts, housing inspection records, CTIP training records, compliance plans, and other documents as required. I'm about to end here, so hold on there. But CTIP, this is typically how we receive most of our tips for CTIP violations. The contracting officer representative, our core, as they're commonly called, find a violation through surveillance, usually through employee interviews. There's specific questions that are listed by the quality assurance specialists that are standard for employee interviews, and they are required to either ask those on a monthly, quarterly, or semi-annually basis. If any of those questions come back to affirmative, that gets pushed up to me, and we act on it. I will go out and violate the violation and gather documented data. I'll notify the prime contractor of the violation, and the prime contractor and myself will conduct that investigation jointly, concurrently. And what that does is it doesn't allow for any finger pointing on that point. You know, we both identify the problems, we both work through them, and we get what needs to be done to correct the situation and provide a remedy to that employee. Both the CTIP coordinator and the prime contractor report the violation to appropriate authorities. As I said before, that's the DODIG, DCIS, or the ACO, or through me, which I would notify you, one of those three. If a contractor internally, one thing really important to know, if the contractor internally finds and appropriately reports violations, this prevents any negative actions from being taken against the contractor. All right, now this is questions, but I have a couple things I just want to add. Here are some of the typical violations that we deal with, and some of the things that we've done within this past year. Recruitment fees been pretty hot and heavy. As I said, it was just recently updated in 2019. Typically, there's not a bunch of people sitting around waiting to see what changes of the FAR are occurring. So as they define recruitment fees and the checklist changed, they started defining things in 21, 22 in that area. So we're dealing with a lot of those issues right now for that 3-year lag period. But on recruitment fees specifically, we recently returned $87,000 that was returned to Kenyans who were charged fees after 2019. This was self-reported from the subcontractor. The sub stopped using the recruiting agency in Kenya, which was really bad because this this particular person was preying on his own community. The subcontractor was already being paid under the subcontract, and he had no reason to charge recruitment fees. That money was going straight into his pocket. The 4A CTIP coordinator participated in the investigation, dealt with the three prime contractors, and obviously, $87,000 is a huge amount to return to people whose typical income is usually about 150 KD a month. We also returned 150 KD, $495 to Philippine nationals. This may not seem like much, but most of these employees range from the Kuwaiti minimum wage of 75 KD a month to 450 KD, and however you view it, this is a significant portion of their monthly payments. Return of passports. Many companies offer to retain passports for safekeeping. Most of these people live in camps, but they're not allowed to maintain a passport without permission from the employees. We recently had 3 passports returned to Philippine nationals who wish to maintain control of their own passports. Now, these next ones are the housing conditions we found in camp environments. The housing conditions, typically the weather cooling, pest becomes a problem this time of year. Flies are becoming more numerous. Bed bugs tend to turn up. Rodents and spiders tend to start occupying these camps. And not only that, all living spaces, not just these camps, but we're there to protect these people, so we keep a special eye out for that. And we also ensure that housing items are repaired. In the past couple of weeks, just alone, we found boiler leaks, drainage issues, lighting and electrical issues. All those were fixed, minor issues, fixed on the spot, just quickly noticed, quickly repaired. And not everything's bad. We have some goodwill that we do every now and then. I hold CTIP forums with all 3 of my prime contractors on every other month. Every now and then there are good news stories that we are part of, and not necessarily part of CTIP, but we do help improve the lives of the workers around us. During one of our CTIP forums, it brought to our attention the menu was not as good as it could have been. As you can imagine, there are different nationalities in each camp and typically just one menu choice. Many of the African nationals didn't care for the spice or Indian food and requested to be served an African diet from time to time. The subcontractor went above and beyond and now provides 2 menu options in the cafeteria that serves either African or Indian food. That's not a huge deal for probably you, me, or probably anybody in this room, but people living in those camps, that's an important part of their life. Most of them work 12 hours a day, 6-7 days a week. And so that one meal that they're getting at dinner time is their main meal. So it is important. With that, I'll take any questions anybody may have.
Thank you so much. We have one question. How can we identify which FAR or DFARS clauses are applicable to our scope of supply or services?
It will be listed in your contract. Typically, any contracts under $550,000 will not have a CTIP, will not have 256-22 in the contract itself, and one of the subparts will be in there. So you just have to read your contract. There's going to be something in there that pertains to CTIPs.
Thank you. And what happens when the U.S. military finds a company that's not being CTIP compliant, especially when they've already gained the contract? And are working on it.
Yeah, that's a great question. There could be a range of remedies involved, and that I don't really concentrate on the remedies. I really try to concentrate on the violations. But I know some of the remedies, they can face fines, they can face debarment, they can be they can all sorts of things. I wonder if you go back in there in the slides, one of the PGI or one of the PGI 222, 1700 and 1704, that lists all the remediations that can happen to a contractor should something rise to that level. And we have had that happen, not recently, but we've had that happen in other places. We've had some pretty unscrupulous contractors out there that didn't treat people with human dignity and respect, honestly.
Thank you. And are there, now that you're talking about remediations, are there any examples that you could provide us on things that could not be remediated if you find a contractor to be doing or engaging in such a thing?
I'm not sure what that question is. I'm pretty sure there's a remediation for everything. There's nothing that's not going to be there's nothing that's going to fall out, be graded in color. Pretty much that's the only thing there was administrative fees, which was, like I said, in 2019, that the Congress took a look at that and further refined the federal acquisition related to address recruitment fees and what fees were allowed to charge. Now there are some people out there that are still trying to take advantage of people. We just dealt with the company recently that tried to charge administrative fees, not necessarily recruitment fees. They listed as administrative fees, and what they were doing was they were charging the employees the amount of money which I think is 50 KD to register for a civil ID. That's completely unallowed. And it's completely within there, but they thought they were being cheeky by changing the narrative and changing the word source. But recruitment fees are recruitment fees. It's wide ranging, and if you need that civil ID to do your job as part of the recruitment fee process.
Okay. And then for local companies, can you define what the government means by debarment?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
For local companies, can you define what the government means by debarment?
By debarment, that means that you will never allowed to be allowed to bid on another contract again.
Great.
You are completely never allowed to do business with the United States government at any point in the future.
Okay. And then I think the last question for CTIPs, how does the U.S. navigate around Kuwait government CTIP infringement?
We work closely with the Kuwaiti ministry, and we also work with PAM, the Public Authority for Manpower. Any things that we have questions on, we can submit a request to PAM. For example, one of the things we just had within one of the ministry decrees for housing labor, they put out there that every apartment will have a 3 filter candle system. Well, you go into many of these apartments and there's only 1 candle system. Well, the difference was what they neglected to do. Some things get lost in transportation or translation, and they meant camps were supposed to have a 3 filter system because they're using a common water source, where a lot of American nationals have a 1 candle system that they use for cooking. So yeah, we work closely with those. Any questions that we have, we work with them very closely. We can also work with the United States Embassy. Like I said, any violations that arise to a criminal level, we have the Department of Defense Inspector General and Department of Criminal Investigative Services, CID, and we also have the ACO at our disposal to help us to wade through those issues as they arrive.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your time and information that you've provided us.
All right.
So I think now we will move on to the May Talk update.
So just real quick, we did a May Talk larger presentation a few months ago, and this is kind of just to provide a further updates. So initially our plan was to do it last FY. However, some things got pushed to the right, and now we're looking at different timelines, but we still are going to have a May Talk for Camp Arif John and Camp Beering for the Army. So this May Talk is to have minor constructions, repair and alterations, might have examples of roads, parking lots, airfields, maybe some fence work, that type of thing. So everything here is still the same. And so I think the thing that's going to be the most important to everybody that's listening is we're looking to have the solicitation out early January, so you can start planning or looking at the timeline. And of course, this is all subject to change as recent events have occurred where we already had to push it to the right some. But ideally, we're going to get the solicitation out in January, And so that's going to be the official solicitation. So everything here is, again, still the same. Posting for the solicitation early January. No changes here. Mandatory qualifications are the same from the last presentation. You still have to be registered in SAMS and JCCS. So make sure you have your SAM and JCCS registration completed. And so the points of contact are the same. So myself, Sergeant Martin is still here. Mr. Derek Thomas is still here. Captain Gonzalez is actually leaving us here soon, and he won't be here for the duration. He's actually leaving here within the next 2 weeks or so. And I know this was very brief, but again, we talked about this before. And this was just to provide some updates. And I know a lot of vendors are interested into the MATOC, but since it's been ongoing and the conversations have been going well so far, I just wanted to give you an update on the timeline and that the requirement is still needed by the government, and the Army is interested in still doing business for the MATOC and fulfilling those requirements to a MATOC. Is there any questions?
Yes, we have a few. So, what are the required documents to upload when applying a proposal manager role in reply to a solicitation?
Proposal manager role. I'm not sure exactly what that entails, but ultimately, you would follow what the solicitation requirements are. Typically, there's a section that covers the information to vendors, whether it's 52.212-1 or section the L&M sections, depending on the type of solicitation. You're going to have information to offers and a evaluation factors to consider. So those two sections, again, 52.212-1 and -2, and sections L and M, depending on the type of solicitation, they're going to cover what information you're going to submit and how the information is going to be evaluated. And in those sections, they should also have provide type of vendor breakdown of like the points of contacts for the vendor as well. So that way we're consistent in our documents and either emailing the people that are necessary and emailing the people that will be responsive to any questions or queries the contracting office might have. The other thing that I can say is that sometimes when we get email traffic back and forth, the person signing off on maybe the proposal, specifically for the MATOC, since it's going to be a request for proposal process, should be somebody who is legally able to bind the contractor. So let's say you might have a VP who can legally bind, but the person who actually signed off on the proposal or is emailing is not the VP. It's like some other person who's not legally able to legally bind the contracting or the contractor. That might cause legal issues. So typically, if you have any bylaws or legal structure that supports that person who is not the president or the vice president of the company, that typically helps us in evaluating that, hey, this person does have the authority to legally bind the company. Hopefully that answers the question.
Thank you. And someone's asking, just to confirm, there is no 30% performance bond or no 30% payment bond on the contract price?
That's correct.
Okay. And then does DFARS 252.2367010 overseas military construction preference for United States firms apply to MATOC?
Not to my knowledge. I would have to read that DFARS clause myself, but if it says that there's a preference for U.S. firms, that's not. I'm not sure if that's applicable to the local vendors or doing construction overseas. So I would have to definitely look into that one, but I'm thinking the answer is no off the top.
Okay. And then someone's asking, what is LogCAP V? What does it stand for, and how can we have a login access to vendor supplier portals under LogCAP V?
So LogCAP V probably just means the LogCAP 5. So it's just the iteration of LogCAP that we're on. I think we're on LogCAP 4 though. Oh, we are on 5. Yeah. So yeah, we're under LogCAP 5 now. And I think we'll be under LogCAP 5 for several years. I don't have a point of contact for LogCAP, but obviously the government, when we use LogCAP, LogCAP is a contractor. So, but LogCAP covers a lot of requirements for the Army, and they might reach out to other companies to be subcontractors for LogCAP. But that's all the information that I can tell you. LogCAP 5 for an ongoing contract.
And then is registration with SAM enough to submit a proposal for MATOC?
Yes, you want to definitely be registered in SAM, but you also want to be registered in JCCS as well to submit for the MATOC. Yeah, just follow the instructions that were given in the earlier JCCS class. Everything is consistent with that.
Okay. Well, thank you. I think that's it for now for MATOC. If you guys have any other questions, we can tackle them later. For now, we'll move on to upcoming opportunities with the U.S. military. So maybe we'll give the floor to 386 Econs.
Hey there. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Captain Brian. I'm the Director of Operations for the 386, the Expeditionary Contracting Squadron. I'm actually outbound at the end of this month, so Captain Eli Nicholson will be taking my place. But I did want to let you guys know about some of the upcoming opportunities we have that are pretty large in scale. This is for Q1 and Q2 of 2024. The big one is our vehicle lease contract. So that's coming up due. And roughly the rough order of magnitude is possibly 300 to 400 vehicles for lease. And this will be a 5-year contract. So basically you'd be taking care of the maintenance on all of this fleet of vehicles. And they'd be out. We'd have those and we'd have to establish some routine maintenance on that. It's pretty large. For Cargo City is our installation at Kuwait International Airport. We've got a little bit of a footprint there. There's some prime power requirements, HVAC requirements, and some other infrastructure types that we'll be recompeting. I believe that's Q2 of 2024. So be on the lookout for that. The best you can do is look on SAM and basically wait for the solicitation to be posted there. That's where we'll be posting everything. There's a potential for airfield pavements as well. That would be about January. So again, Q1, airfield pavements. So that's paving everything on the airfield, asphalt. There may be some concrete in there as well, but we mostly asphalt at this point. Pending any questions?
Okay, I think there's nothing for now.
Okay.
Great. And I think we might share that as well by email if possible.
Yes, I can do that.
Opportunities, that'd be great. Oh, here we go. How can we obtain requirements directly from the base or STEAM contracting officers that are commonly not listed in STEM and JCCS? Maybe like what you're mentioning.
Right. So that's kind of what we're getting after with the internal vendor list, right? Is that we're trialing these vendors that are on. So thank you for participating. So your registration will come to us and then we'll work on giving you those solicitations, right? So when we're trying to get quotes, we'll send them to maybe 5, 10, 12 of you guys at a time and vet you that way to where you get repeat business. But the large, complex, high dollar ones will be solicited on SAM.
Great. Are there any opportunities in the IT field?
IT field, I'd say we're pretty relegated to purchasing from stateside vendors or using specific, usually stateside contractors to work on that stuff. So likely not. Our hands are tied on most of those requirements.
Okay. Do you guys have any other questions for Captain Brian? All right.
Look, thank you.
Thank you so much. And then does RCCKU have any other opportunities that they'd like to share, or is Me Talk the main one?
No opportunities to share at this time.
Okay, so then I think we can tackle some of the questions that we missed before, since we have a little bit of time. Give me a second. Okay, this is in regards to JCCS ratings. How can we check the JCCS ratings after completing the registration?
I'm not sure what the status shows up as the vendor side. I think once you register, it should just give you a current update whether the registration is complete or not. I'm not sure what the visibility looks like from a vendor's point of view.
Okay. How can we obtain requirements directly from the base or contracting officer that are commonly not listed in SAM?
So typically we work with a list. And for our contracting office, we usually go by JCCS or SAM registration to look up NICS codes. And then as the Air Force guys were saying, they use their own lists, and then they're adding more people to the list based on AmCham registration. And so, but typically for most requirements, generally, you can check SAMs. If there's a local vendor type of action, we use localized lists based on JCCS registration and SAM registration.
Okay. Yes, PIEE registration.
PI registration.
So they want to understand a little bit about what is PIEE and do they need it, with SAM, JCCS and all that when they're bidding into
Yes, so PI registration is required because of the wide area workflow. It's an invoicing and receiving report function to get invoices paid. So in the clauses of the contract or the purchase order, you'll see a section, I forget the name of it, but it's wide area workflow. If you just go through the contract, look for wide area workflow, you'll see a section. It'll walk them through the PI registration and getting into wide area workflow, otherwise known as WAF or WAF, depending on what type of what place you are coming from in the US. But yeah, so once you register, that's how you're going to submit invoices for contracts that require invoices or purchase orders that require invoices. There's not typically any other functions in PI that a vendor would use, but primarily is the wide area workflow to get invoices that they'll need.
Great, thank you. And then can you explain Unison Marketplace and the reverse bidding? Is it going to be used more in this region?
Yeah, Unison is similar to SAM, right? So there's Unison, and actually, speaking of PI, you can actually now post solicitations to PI as well. Yeah, so PIEE has its own solicitation posting functions. But so both SAM and PI are both government ran and non-fees. There aren't fees involved in either of the processes. So if solicitations posted in SAM or PI, there's no other middleman other than the government. So it's direct. Unison is otherwise, I forget the term, but it's a e-marketplace, or it's a electronic marketplace where solicitations can be posted and it's allowed by the government. And so kind of like GSA, even though GSA is government, but Unison is a marketplace where some solicitations might be posted. Right now, we have ran some solicitations through Unison, but it's not likely that we will continue to do that as Pi is becoming more applicable e-marketplace for us to post solicitations. Does the Air Force have any other? No.
Our DODAC that you can search by in SAM is FA5. What's it? Oh, 5073.
FA5073. So if you search in SAM for that DODAC, you'll be able to look up their requirements. For us, our DODAC is W912D1. So if you look up W912D1 in SAM, you'll be able to look up solicitations that we post. Okay.
Thank you. And then on April, so last year, Vendors Day, we had a they had projected project for 2024. Are they still planned and active?
Is that for the May talk?
I'm not sure. April 27, 2022.
Oh, 2022. So a lot of the things that might have been planned at that time were either already fulfilled or they went to log cap or other requirement entities to fulfill, I would say.
Okay. And then one company is asking, can we participate in solicitations published on AmCham, ECO, and EuroNeco?
Can you repeat the last part?
EuroNeco, EuroNeco.
Euro, I have no idea what that is, to be honest with you. Yeah, so our solicitations are probably going to be posted to SAM or Pi if we're using it at that time, but that's all I can say.
Okay. And then can you confirm that spot registration is not required until you win an applicable contract?
Yes. So once you are awarded a contract, registration in spot is then required.
Okay. And are business opportunities open to military members?
Are business opportunities open to military members? I'm talking about U.S. military, or you're talking about foreign military?
U.S. military members.
U.S. military members. No. No. Yeah.
Maybe they're trying to get at veteran preferences. I mean, that stuff isn't out here. Veteran-owned small businesses.
Yeah. You would have to be out of the military to be approved as a veteran owned business. So yeah, it's not completely impossible, but it would probably be impossible directly. So an acting staff sergeant in the military could not apply for a contract with the federal government. Now, if the staff sergeant had a spouse who owned a company, then they may or may not be able to propose, but then that person could not directly be involved with the acquisition process in any way. Hopefully that clarifies that. Yeah. And so we don't also use socioeconomic categories for set-asides locally, other than local vendors. Maybe that will be a set-aside, but socioeconomic groups such as like veteran-owned or women-owned veteran or disabled veterans aren't socioeconomic categories that we would use here in Kuwait.
Did you say they are or they aren't?
They are not.
Okay. Okay. All right. I think that's all we have for now. And someone cleared that EuroNeco is the Navy solicitation website.
No, we have not our contracting office does not use that as a solicitation posting website.
Okay. Okay. So that's mainly Navy specific, correct?
Right.
Okay. Great. Thank you so much. I don't believe there are any other questions. But just so that participants know, this recording will be shared with you once it's approved. And we will also post it on our website so that you can easily access it. We will also share the presentation with you, the PowerPoint slides. And again, as mentioned on the comments, if you have any capabilities, company profiles, with your SAM and NAICS codes, please send them to us to communications@amchamkuwait.org, and we will add it to the shared drive that we have with the U.S. military, so that they can keep those files with them as well. So thank you all so much for your time. And if there are any pending questions or very specific company stuff, please send them our way, and we will be sure to share them with the speakers today. Thank you.